Good morning, Care Bears. How's everybody feeling today? On this early morning. I saw a shooting star, but it was just a star in the trees. Anyhow, I may have to rethink everything about canon. So I found a new flat Earth church. Thank God. I've been looking for it, praying for it, asking for it. I just want something similar to my videos that are full of information, you know? I know mine are disorganized. His are very organized. He's got books and everything. He's the God Culture on YouTube. If I can think of it on the description, I'll put a link. Anyway, if not, I'll try to get it into the comments shortly after, because I'm a bit of a slacker. So this new church guy, he's going through why the books were removed from the Bible and who removed them and all that stuff. And I was about maybe 80% correct. The Ascensions of Isaiah, the Book of Bartholomew, were two that he's unsure of. They're just books that I've found. See, when I prayed for a while for more personal knowledge of God. I wanted to know things about God that just you would know about your best friend. Right? I said, I'm making you my world now, and I want to know you. I want to know some comforting things and some personal things and stuff like this that I can have a better feeling of who you really are. And prayed for that for a while, and then I went out and found any book on scripture at all, even remotely. I just started searching names from the Bible, book of Adam and Eve, book of Noah, book of whatever, Josephus, Ascensions of Isaiah, whatever. Book of Bartholomew. So those are the couple so far that apparently don't pass the test. I haven't gotten to how the test is performed yet. He's a little all over the place too, in that he'll talk about a subject for a minute and then say, and I'll prove that to you through scripture, and then move on to another subject, and he hasn't come back to the scripture yet, but it's in a series, and he's going to work through book by book to test them all. So he's getting to the scripture, and just right now it's only the first part of the series, second part, and so he's just kind of laying a base of what he's about to say or what he's about to prove, so that you're going in through book by book, but you've already got this base of scriptures, and why he can go through book by book, and who had the right to alter any of the word or whatever. And see, it was the Levites. They were the priests of the church and whatnot, and then they'd fallen away, and God punished them. But his book was complete at that point. The Old Testament was full, complete, and good, to use a biblical word. And so therefore, excuse me. So therefore, it's we need to know what was in that book at that time, right? And then he was done with the Levites. Then he doesn't need, he's not totally done with them. They're still here on earth, and he still knows who they are, but they don't. At that point, from then to coming up really soon, end time prophecy, the Levites themselves didn't need to know who they were because nobody needed to alter the Bible anymore. It was done. So that was after Jesus, right? Because John, Jesus, Peter, like most of them were all Levites. Same as Moses and Aaron. They were always Levites to take care of the book. That was their job. Like, they didn't get land. They got the response. They got the church. So they're to be in all of the land, and they are in charge of the church and Bible temple. There wasn't a church, but a temple. So then he goes on to say that, so the Catholics, and that's not how he worded it, I'm wording it different. The Catholics and the modern Pharisees had no right. And what he didn't get to was who the modern Pharisee is. That's really bugging my brain. And he mentioned the Maccabees, but in the way that he mentioned it, I'm not sure if he's going to prove it or disprove it. Almost seems like he's going to try to disprove it. And I don't think I'm a skeptic on that. Disproving the Maccabees, that's a biggie. But anyway, in the Maccabee, and this is the biggest reason that the Maccabee is hidden from us. He had a bunch of sons. His name wasn't Maccabee. I can't remember what his real name was, but he had a bunch of sons. His oldest son was not Joseph, Judah, and he was known as. They even called him the Lion again. That name coming up, and but they called him the Hammer, and that's what Maccabee is. Maccabee means the hammer, and so he was Judah the Hammer, Judah Maccabee, and then the name stuck with them after that. But when the Hammer was in charge, he conquered the land and reestablished the borders of Israel, and then went further out and started conquering even neighbor lands a little bit around himself to really fortify himself, and took over Edom at the time. And there's other writings of this but again, he said that he didn't like another book, Jasher, I believe. But in the book of Jasher, it also describes this, and I think it's Jasher. Could be wrong. Anyways, he was even a general in the army during the siege of the temple. After Jesus, Jesus said it'll be torn down brick by brick. There won't be a brick left of this building. That's because they were burning it and warring with it or whatever, and the Jews had a whole whack of gold. Well, they had it hidden, so when it burned, the gold was melting. I can't remember exactly how it all happened, how it worked out, but the gold had melted right into the mortar, and it was seeping into all the bricks. So when the Romans were done their siege, the temple itself was saturated with gold, so they actually smashed open each brick of the entire temple in order to find if there was chunks of gold inside of gotten inside of the porous parts of the brick. So it was totally tore down. So when they go and put their hand on that wall and say that it's the temple, it isn't the temple. Like all your presidents and stuff, that's a Roman camp is what it was. It was the Roman military base. But when you follow Edom's life and whatever bloodline, it's very clear as well throughout the writings. So it starts with the biggest event, first event in Edom, whatever. There was a bunch, but I mean, as a generations, was when they went to bury Joseph, right? Edom, Jacob. They went to bury Jacob, and Edom stopped them at the cave of Machpelah and said, "This is my cave. I never sold it to your brother or to your father." And so then Joseph said, "Well, I get the paperwork. Go get it, Naphtali." Naphtali goes back to get the paperwork. And in the meantime, Edom's like, "Oh shit, what are we going to do now? Let's fight." And they start fighting them. And there was this deaf kid in the Israel camp. And he said, "What's going on? Why aren't we burying my grampy?" And they said, "Oh, the Edom's at the front stopping us or whatever." And he ran right to the front lines and cut off Esau's head, decapitated him, which got certain members of his family more worked up. His grandson, particularly, shit, I just had his name and I lost it just like that. Anyways, his grandson particularly, and I'll think of his name before I get to the end of this. So then they fight it out, and Joseph and the Israelites win, obviously, and but they take him and a couple of his dudes. They see that he's Zepho. They see that he's such a warrior that they say, "Well, we got to put him in prison." And he goes to prison until Joseph dies. And then a new Pharaoh comes into play, and there's no Joseph around, and nobody knows why this man's down there in prison, and he's bitching to get out. So they released him. And I've also heard that he escaped. But either way, off he goes. He goes down to Africa and becomes a general under the king of Africa, a king of Africa, because there was many. But that it was actually, no, it was, fuck, I can't remember his name. He's the king of Africa at that time, was the father of the king who took the elephants over the mountain. He's in every military training course ever in history. He's the greatest general ever. Nobody knows how he got those elephants over the hills. But obviously he took baby elephants over the hills, had them trained in Israel, and then he came over the hills afterwards when they were grown up and they went to war, right? Like he planned that in advance. That's how he did it, you dummies. Anyhow, so Zepho keeps asking that king, "Let's go fight Israel. Let's go fight Israel." Israel's in Egypt under slavery, but he's pissed at them. No, they weren't under slavery. They were just living in Egypt. Slavery happened because of Zepho. So, let's go fight him. Let's go fight him. Let's go fight him. And this is how you find out who all of the Edomites are, because Zepho, finally, the king says, "No, fuck off." He goes to Baal and shit. Anyways, Zepho pisses off to a place called Chittim. And see, the Africans had invaded Chittim for goods and stuff every year. They went up and raided. And anyways, so he goes there, and his name means... shit. Sword... Living by the sword... I can't remember, but basically his name means that he'll fucking kill for money. So anyway, he goes to Chittim, ends up defending them from Africa in one spot, and then drives the Africans away. And then, so over that year, word spreads, they make him king, or they made him their protector for the next year. And then that year comes and he stops the African king altogether and saves Chittim from being pillaged. And then, so then they make him their king. But in the meantime, Africa's down there building up troops, pissed off. He calls his brother up. His brother brings his army. They bring both armies up against Chittim, and they're going to fuck up Zepho. And the people of Chittim get him to pray to God, Abraham's God. He prays to the God of Abraham and Isaac, but not Jacob. He doesn't mention Jacob's name. And he asks for the promises, and then he wins the war. And then he immediately turns his back on God and starts putting idols up. But God shows his beautiful forgiveness and sovereignty. Anyhow. And then after that, for Chittim, he expands it and takes all of Italy and makes the borders of Rome for the first time. That's when Rome is actually formed under the name Chittim. And then the African king came at him again, but he won a second time somehow. Geez, I can't believe I don't remember that. Anyway, then he calls up all his cousins, and he starts naming who his cousins are. And they get all these armies together and go down to Egypt. And he's going to go and kill Israel. And so Egypt says to themselves, well, we can defend this army, and we won't use Israel in the battle because it's all their cousins, because they're all cousins, right? They say they could easily turn on us and make us lose the battle in mid-battle if they're not, if they're not righteous. So they'd say to Israel, you guys just be ready. If we need you, we'll call on you. And they go out and they start getting their asses handed to them. And they call on Israel, and Israel sends 150 dudes out, and those 150 men push off all three armies and push them all the way to the border and don't lose a single man. And that doesn't sound anything like who we're told the Jews are, like me, Jerry Seinfeld. No, that sounds like Mike Tyson, Bo Jackson, fucking all these football and basketball guys, right? They all come running out there and fucking just wiped out armies. Hand-to-hand combat with these guys, and they got a sword and a shield, and they work together, and they're under God. They didn't stand a chance. And anyhow, so I think that is all evidence of who Edom and Israel is. And it lays it out perfectly and brings us, Edom was like a bunch of peoples all in the Middle East, but including them was all of Rome. It was ruled over by an Edomite. And then, so then the Edom, they keep ruling Rome, but then the Rome gets destroyed, and Rome becomes the Roman Catholic Church. And then the Roman Catholic Church, still Edom, moves on to changing the Bible. But I told you about during the Maccabees, so way later on, before the Roman Catholic Church ever come to existence, in between all that, I guess, the Maccabees happens, and Edom's converted to Jews, and they become the Pharisees, and that's why Jesus fights with the Pharisees. Now, there was blood Jews that became Pharisees as well, obviously. There was Peter, Paul, one of them. I can't remember. Anyhow, it was Peter, and he, he was a Pharisee, but he was also a Levite. But the Pharisees were intriguing to the Levites because they went so overboard with the rules and stuff, right? Pushed all this propagandist rule shit and money, and so the Levites got in there all proud to be the ones, the most strict sect of Judaism, which wasn't biblical. It was just pissing contest. Who could be the most strict, and then it was all about money technically, but to the men themselves, it was, you know, this pissing contest that fooled them into it, which also goes to show who the people are. But anyhow, that all men are like that, I guess. So the Maccabees happens. So now you got Edomites, and you got Rome still, but you got Edomites inside of Israel now. Moving forward, they make this sect, and they really go way overboard. They actually become the kings, the Herodians, during Jesus's time, kill all the babies, all that shit. That's Edomites. He killed his own kids and shit. He strangled a bunch of his kids because he had a Hebrew wife in order to be the king, and then but all these, his kids had more right to the throne because they had actual Hebrew blood in them. And then he'd get in arguments with them. He strangled a bunch of them to death. His wife's brother, he had him drowned to death, and just, he was a psychopath. But it was all about him being an Edomite and being nervous of somebody taking his crown because he had no blood right to it. And at the time, blood was everything, and everybody knew their bloodlines. Most of them. So and then in 45, whatever, it was the Rothschild signature on the Balfour Agreement that guts Israel to the Jews, which are the Edomites. But in conjunction with the Roman Catholic Church, the Edomite Pharisees Jew got together and decided to remove books from our Bible, and there's no Levites there. There's no need for Levites anymore because the Bible was done complete and full, ready to go to the end of days. And that's why we all need to read the removed books. But I'll link that guy and that particular service that I'm watching right now that he's going through this new series, and hopefully you can find him and like, share, subscribe to all his videos, but also learn with me about some of this stuff as we go through this adventure with this guy. Have a great day, guys. God bless. Like, subscribe, and share to my shit, and if you don't mind, and pray, and remember, there's a wonderful, beautiful future for this next generation. We're gonna have some hard times. We had great times coming up. We had really soft, awesome lives, and now we're gonna have to fight to have the next generation have those same soft and happy and wonderful lives. So we got to go through this shitty time that we're going through right now. But then after that, God promises us 1,000 years of peace on earth and some other things. But let's just stick to that one thought. 1,000 years of peace on this earth before Judgment Day. And where, we're going to all live to be our old age, ripe old age, 150, 200, I don't know. But it says that if a man dies at 100 years old, it would be like a baby dying. So, things to look forward to. God bless.